Okay, we're back. So, I'm going to hide all of these objects for our next part of the lesson. I'm going to use my outliner to create a little folder just to dump everything into and hide quickly. So, outliner, your hierarchy. I'm just going to add a new collection. Right click, add new collection. It's just a little folder we can create. Collection, new. So, right click, collection, new. I'll call this robot and bits. And I'll grab everything. I won't put my camera in there. I might need that at some point later. Grab my cube, the empty, the one-armed robo from earlier. Hello. He looks like he could serve ice cream. And the sphere, which is Earth, and just drag them into my scene. Or into my box, I should say. Control and click. Grab multiple. And literally just drag them into that folder. I'm just doing that so I can turn them all off with one click. Hide them all with one click. So I'm just going to grab the first Skullcraft image and import that as reference on Moodle, week 2. And that is imported facing my current viewpoint. I want it to lie down flat in the scene. I'll jump to my object properties and just zero out all of these values. You can right click, reset to default values, or just type 0 6 times. Reset to default, 0. Reset to default, 0. So it's sitting flat on the ground. I'll call this Skullcraft Ref. Next, we're going to add a plane into this world. Use my add menu, Shift A for the shortcut. Add mesh plane. And it's there sitting exactly on top of it, so you can see it flickering in and out as it tries to decide which one to draw first. We can just bring that up on the Z by 0.1. In my operator panel. So this one, it's nearly a box, but not quite, so it will require a slight bit of an unwrap. If you take a look at them, it's just an oblong, a rectangle box with a little bit of a tooth bit on the front. And for this one, we will have to unwrap it. So on my plane here, I'm going to jump into edit mode. I'm also going to jump into my top viewport, top view. Oh, and make sure I'm not in extrude to cursor, so that's going to cause some problems. So now what I want to do is scale this so it matches our first face, our front face right here. So move and scale it to match in edit mode. Scale it in. And maybe X-ray will be beneficial at this point so you can actually see through. And I see it's not aligning perfectly, so I'm just going to use my edge select to bring that top edge up to the line. Oh, and also I kind of missed with that other edge on the right as well. So I'll grab that edge and bring it in. Oops. So for this little teeth area down here, I'm going to need to extrude a little area down. First, I need to create the necessary face to extrude it down. I'm going to use my loop cut. I'm just going to add a single loop in the center. So loop cut. Add a single loop in the center. And then I'm going to bevel that edge. And when we bevel an edge, it's just going to create two more loop cuts, but separating from the center. We could also create a two loop cuts and then move them into position. So bevel this edge. Until it lines up. Then I can go ahead and grab this newly created edge. Along the bottom. And extrude it down. And again, I'm in top view, top orthographic. Create this little flap for the teeth. We're going to need some more geometry here in order to create a curve. So I'm going to select both these two edges here. And subdivide. So subdivide, we can just right click. It is the first option. Subdivide. Create as many or as few as you want. I'm going to need more than this though. In our operator panel, the number of cuts we can put here. I'm going to say 6. And obviously, the more you create, the more smooth that curve is going to be. Switching to vertex select, I can start pulling those vertex up into position. So I'll grab the 2 on the outside, get my move tool, and just pull them up. The next 2, which shift select. And yeah, that white is kind of interfering. If you find the white is getting in the way too much, again, you have properties to turn down the opacity, but I'd have to leave edit mode to do that. Pull that up. Select those 2, and then ever so slightly, it's only a tiny little curve there. So this is from Canon Papercraft, a great resource if you want some quick textures and quick modeling practice, because it's all designed to be made in paper. But it will say just ignore all of these folds. That's where you put the glue. So ignore all of that. We don't need to model that. So to get the rest of this model and to get it exactly fitting our texture, I'm just going to grab this edge on the left here. Extrude it out to the edge. With extrude region. And from these two faces, the front face with the actual face, and this side edge here, we can actually figure out all of the proportions we need for the rest of the model. So this is obviously a box folded flat. So all we need to do now is fold that like we're folding paper, fold this side face down until it is at a 90-degree angle. So I can hide my Skullcraft image for the moment. I'll grab this face. If I try and rotate it now, it's going to rotate based on the center of this face, the origin point of that face. It's going to start deforming the mesh in ways we don't want. And that's because right now, our pivot point, well, I have it set to individual origins by default bounding box center. We want this to fold exactly along this edge down here. So in order to do that, we need to set it to pivot around whatever our current active element is. So I'm going to switch up the top here, pivot point to active element. I'm going to switch to vertex select. I'm just going to deselect with shift and reselect an object. So now that is my last selected vertex. That is my active element. Now if I start rotating, along the Y I should say, so the green line, it is going to fold as we need it. And in this case, I wanted to fold at minus 90 degrees. We can hold Control and it will snap into predetermined angles, but also we have our operator panel, we can put it in exactly. So minus 90 degrees. In here. And I can do that again if anyone needs me to. I can. So, you have this face created. You have this face selected. The change we need to make is our pivot point. Change from bounding box to active element. And then I'm going to switch from face select to vertex so I can pick a vertex to rotate around. And right now they're all orange, means all of them, there's no primary selection at the moment. If I deselect with shift and reselect one of the vertex on the edge, you see it's now highlighted. That's our active element. I'm going to rotate on the Y, the green line. And I can do whatever rotation I want because I'm going to modify that in the operator panel to -90. Next, we're going to extrude and try and match, and we could use snapping to match it perfectly, but I'm just going to eyeball it. It's not that important. It's going to extrude out the other side, and we'll know it's going to perfectly match. So I'll go into Edge Select again. Grab this bottom edge. Jump into Top View. And I'll turn on X-ray so we can see how much I'm extruding. And again, extrude region and bring it out. If I hold control, it snaps, but not to our shape. Just bring it out so it lines up as perfectly as you can make it. Yep. So you have the fold. Great. You have this edge selected, the bottom edge. So go to Extrude Region. Jump into Top View, numpad 7. And then I just turned on X-ray so I could see how much I'm extruding by. X-ray up next to wireframe. Extrude. Until it sits as exactly as you can make it. Pixel perfect as you can. But it's going to snap to the grid. So once just try not to overload. Okay, last. Oh, that totally didn't work for me. Wow. Cool. We're all on the same page. I really hope that would work, but it didn't. Anyway, let's move it down. So I'm just going to move it down until it is flat, as flat as I can make it. Or actually, no, what am I doing? I'll undo that. I'm going to use my shortcuts to make sure this extrudes in the Y direction, or in the X direction, sorry, red line. So if I just press E, it's going to extrude in all different directions. If I press Y, it will lock it into the Y. If I press X, it will lock it into the X. To do both? But you can extrude in two axes at once. You have to shift and then the axis you don't want to use. So if I say Shift Z, it goes in the X and the Y, but not the Z. Shift X, the Y, and Z. Anyway, we're getting too much. E, and then X. And then I can look in my top view and see if it's actually in line. It's not. I'll just nudge it over with my move. And now we have enough that we can just start filling in these faces. Face fill. So I just need to select two edges and it will fill between those, create a face for us. F is the shortcut. I will select this one. I have it lined up as best I can. If I jump into front view, jump into top view, you can see it's lined up pretty well. I'll just select two edges together, press F, and it'll fill that face. I can do the same on this top edge here. I can select these two opposing edges right there. Fill. And along here, I want this flap to stay on its own, so I don't want to fill along there. If I do an edge select there, there, and there, we're going to end up with some crazy shape if I fill. Oh, yes. So, no good. So I actually wanted to fill. Oops. Top to bottom. So my top edge, my bottom edge. F for fill, where it's up here in your face controls. Face fill. The model is complete. Next, we need to actually apply our material to it. I go to Material Preview. There's our weird little shape. I add a new material slot. Let's call it Skull Mat or Skull Head Mat. Base color, select the image, select skull, what's it called? Skullcraft. Base color, image texture. I can add from the drop down because I brought it in. Skullcraft 1-1. Not what we're looking for. So let's put it on a couple of sides. So for this, and just because of the extra geometry of the teeth, we will need to unwrap this one. Unwrap, it's best to go to the layout that is built for it. Let's go to UV editing layout, up the top. And you'll automatically be in edit mode on your right window and the UV viewer on the left. To scroll this menu at the top so you can actually have a material preview, hold your middle mouse while hovering over here, this area, and drag it across so you can see your different view modes. We'll switch to material preview so we can see live what's happening as we're editing the model. Edit mode, yes, edit mode. So the reason I picked Skullcraft is for UV editing, it actually gives you where your UV cuts should be made. So we need this box to fold flat, just like if you took a knife to a carton, push it flat, it would come out. You can see the 6 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are along here. We have 6 sides on our cube. Our front face is down here. That's where we want this face to be. If I turn on this little mode right there, lots of buttons, lots of buttons. This one keeps it in sync. You can actually see on the mesh, on the UV, where the mesh is being selected. So you can see as I select it, the whole face here is right there. Select over there, this side, the Canon bit is being projected there. And the teeth are somewhere. Can't really tell. So what we need to do is cut this UV open so it can fold flat, and we can see exactly where the cuts should be. They should be along all of the teeth. And on the outside of these. So to create the cut, I need to jump to Edge Select right here. And on my model, I'm just going to select all of these faces. Shift Alt. Maybe we can get some loops. Yes, we can. And then we can mark a seam where we want this mesh to split apart. So we want one along the bottom teeth because you can see it's clearly cut. It's where you would cut it out if you had a scissors. I go to my UV panel. Third last from the bottom is Mark Seam. We can mark and unmark seams where the model is going to split. UV Mark Seam. And you should see it on the model as a little red line. Mark Seam. There's my first seam created. Yep. Yep. So just select the edge you want to be a seam. And we know all the way along the bottom is going to be a seam. Shift click. Oh, that's not right. Shift Alt to get the loop. Shift select. Shift select. Do we have that one along the bottom? UV. Mark seam. And once you click it, it'll turn red. That is set. So that's where it's going to split apart from. Our next seam continues on to the edge here and around. So on our 3D shape, that is going around and along the bottom. So we just select those three, mark seam. 1, 2, 3. UV, mark seam. Same on the other side. We look down here, mark seam. 1, 2, 3. UV, mark seam. Do we need any more seams? Where? This one? No. This answer is going to blow your mind. We're done. There are no more seams because this seam that we marked is actually also this seam. This seam that we marked here, if we folded it around in on itself, would be this seam. And this final seam on the bottom, you can tell what's going on. Yep, would be this seam. And this final one at the very top, that's where we connect to the teeth. So all of our seams being created. Just have to think a little bit spatially. So now we're ready to unwrap this model and actually position it so things look right. To unwrap this model, we must select all of the faces. Select all, A is the shortcut. So we can unwrap pieces at a time, we can unwrap the whole thing. In certain cases, you might need to re-unwrap things. Obviously, models get a bit more complex than this. Select all, and then again in our UV, just click unwrap. And you're going to see this window change on the left. Pow! Well, that didn't work out. I just have it on and off.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Something has gone terribly wrong. Oh, I think I know what's happened. I think the teeth need to be separate. Let me just do a quick check. In fact, I probably should have put it there and not around the teeth. So I'm just going to mark one more seam and hopefully this class doesn't end in a disaster. Unwrap one more time. Problem. Why are they all separate? Ah. Yes. No. Oh, hold on. Okay, not how it happened when I unwrapped it yesterday, but we'll work with it. So I'm going to have to crowbar this together, but now I'm selecting all three. To keep your mesh mode and UV edit mode in sync, turn on this so you can see what's happening. And now what I need to do in my UV window, I've selected these first three faces. Just move, rotate, and scale this into the correct position. I'm going to grab these three. I'm going to move thing down here, and you can see the update on the model. You can see it sideways, so I'll need to rotate it. And hold Control to snap to angles. And then I'm going to scale this thing down. And then I'll have to probably move some vertex around. That seems to fit pretty well. It is upside down. Rotate the whole thing. So that is the first part. I go ahead and select the side of the head. It's up here. It just becomes a case of moving things until they're in position and rotating them. That looks like to be the right orientation. I'll scale this down. And I can grab by individual vertex as well, just to push things into position. Grab that other side. I know where it needs to go. Now, I don't know why they all split apart as one. They should have been one object. We had everything fused together. Maybe it's because I used fill and it created some ad hoc seams. But they are connected, so it should have unwrapped as one. Teeth next. That one at least is much more recognizable. You know where that should fit. Move it down. Rotate. And scale as needed. I'll grab some individual faces or verts and just pull it into position. And then it's just taking those individual flats and moving them where they should be. So top of the head, we know the top of the head is right here. I'll just grab it, move it and scale it, and rotate if necessary. That's the right orientation, I think. No, it isn't. Rotate around. Again, grabbing another face, guessing that it's going to be upside down, rotating it around, scaling it down. Ah, the webs are connected. Nice. Final face, and it's fitting on that bit. That's actually a glue point. That's where you connect it to the body. So useful if you do create the body. Where is it? It's down here for some reason. Oh yeah, so I turned on mesh edit mode, and then I turned it off just to see one at a time. So like you can see all at once. And this is how it should have looked when I unwrapped. It should have unfolded. But I think the method I used was slightly different than yesterday when I tested this. Oh, I did something wrong. But what about my recovery? Huh? Great. Unflappable in the face of failure. Okay, there's something going on there. Anyway, that will do. Yes. Just a minute though, I need to set the task for the rest of the class, and next week it's a much more involved version of papercraft. So here is your tutorial, your assignment for next week. We'll take a look at the start of the next class. It is what we were doing just now, but more so. Handily though, I have it step by step, each step in PDF, built for Blender 2.8. So if there's any slight variation, I hope it's not different. But basically, you're going to take a papercraft and go through it all to build Big Ben, large Bernard. Until eventually you have a papercraft model. Now, you also notice the method I use for creating our oblong skullcraft is not the most efficient method for creating a box. I'm totally fine with you taking any approach you want to creating the Big Ben towers. I just want it to be in the same dimensions as is in the UV. So it fits on the model. There's no stretching or skewing or anything like that. But there is a step-by-step, and at the end, you will end up with a glorious piece of English architecture that you can later destroy in one of your games. So that is for next week. I'll have an upload location up on Moodle as well, a little OneDrive Dropbox you can pop it into. And at the start of the next class, we'll take a look and see how you did. I'll now stop the stream